mean, if I'm going to drink alcohol in bulk anymore, it's clear. It's a clear liquor.
I can't think of a better way to say welcome to the Agile Uprising podcast. My name is Chris Murman, and it seems like whenever I decide to host, shenanigans occur. So we have a murderer's row of shenanigans players. And I think I know what we're going to talk about, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm gonna introduce everybody, and then I'm gonna say to little brother Jon Schneider, you get to kick us off. So making a grand appearance out of the ashes, a phoenix rising, right from the dark side of the moon, James Gifford. Holy crap! What's up, buddy?
Well, I'd like to confirm the rumors. I have not been in rehab. I have not been locked up abroad. I've just had a whole lot of life happening, and I'm glad to be back on the show.
For the record, nobody has wondered if you're in rehab. Nobody's even said, "Hey, is Giff okay?" We just assumed you're working.
All right.
I was concerned about you overall, right? Overall, but I didn't think you were in rehab. I don't know how to transition out of that. Stephen Kellogg, what's up, brother?
Hello. All good.
Yeah. Mr. Thrash, word up.
I'm here.
Yes, you are. It seems to be that you're in a pantry somewhere in your house with a water heater.
An undisclosed walk-in closet.
No. This laundry room is the size of a certain friend of ours' apartment in New York. But,
that's fair.
I mean, yeah.
That's fair.
And for the record, I mean, this murderous row of people, like, you called us. It's not shenanigans.
I don't know that I did that.
Not shenanigans that fell upon you. It's like, you said, hey, you, let's do a podcast.
I just said who wants to play. Speaking of which, the idea man with a full head of hair that feels like playing Jon Schneider. Hello.
I don't know why I started this, but it's great to be with you guys. This is gonna be fun.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I don't know why Jay Hershko has named himself Tito Balser. But
and you nailed the pronunciation. Being as we can't both be Agile Uprising, that was one of my alter egos in college, along with Lance Ducat. I figured Tito Balser was easier to pronounce.
I see a muted visage. Do we have anybody else joining us?
We have an interested third party that due to being in the witness protection program, he cannot go on to video or give his full real name.
Yes.
So we're just gonna call him as Mr. Hand. Mr. Hand.
Mr. Hand. Okay. Mr. Hand, would you like to say hello?
I told you he can't say hello. He's in the witness protection program.
Oh, okay. Never mind. All right. So the names and voices have been muted and changed to protect the innocent.
So can I be Admiral Akbar?
And here we go.
Only if your beard is a trap.
It is a trap for my food. It's got some cheese balls in it from earlier.
You've trimmed your beard since I last saw you, I will say.
Yo, that is pretty wild though. Like when you find like a bit of like Cool Ranch Doritos and you're like, yo, I was hungry. This is nice.
Jon, I can't believe that I'm pointing to you as the responsible party in this endeavor, but what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so a lot of good topics came up. I think one strike, this is something that was going to be a good topic to discuss. So where there was the metrics that were sent out on the state of Agile, and something that piqued my interest when I saw some of those metrics was that there are twice as many external coaches as there are internal coaches. And I thought that was just an interesting stat. And then I posed the question, well, what actually makes a good coach? And does it matter if they're external or internal? And are they successful? And, it kind of just started to spawn on the whole, well, is it really effective to have internal coaches at all? And if so, are you really just fooling yourself? Or is external really the right route? Or are we fooling ourselves there? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what that leads into.
Yeah. So let me tee that off with Jay. When we did the kind of the New Year's, 2021 pod that I cannot confirm nor deny that I was on because nobody used their real name. But in that podcast, I do believe that we sort of kind of skirted around this topic of how valuable is it to be an FTE versus right now. This is probably going to go again, when I host, it goes horribly wrong in many ways, and I intend it for it to. But let's start with a responsible direction, which is, why don't you, Jay? What did we talk about then? And maybe we can have people step in.
Okay, so we definitely did talk about this in the 2021, the future of Agile coaching, right? Where is the world going? And
right.
it was alluded to, but we never went in because I think the conversation more centered around the idea of the traveling Agile coach. What does that do? What is the coronavirus lockdowns do to the consulting world vis-a-vis, especially travel onsite, offsite, etc. But I can say that historically we've actually quasi tackled this topic before, but I think it's important enough that it needs revisiting. We did have an episode, I think Colleen was the host on that one, where we talked about, do we want full-time or consultant coaches? And we definitely dug into this. I think it was the dark side of coaching, where Murman, you had the remark about in the world, not of it, and coaches getting pickled from being FTEs. And I know we've definitely had this conversation, but I don't think we've went to the extent that Jon was really starting to ask, where now that there is some it's not anecdotal, it's arithmetic, the response. Now we have an actual number from a larger population than us. We've never gone down this route to say, well, what are the numbers telling us, but what does the numbers say, but what does our gut feel?
Yeah. So Jon, I know that you're an FTE, correct? Right. And Todd, you're an FTE currently. Stephen, you're a consultant, right?
I'm a weird mix, yes.
Sure. That sounds sort of like an answer. Jay is an FTE. Giff, are you currently an FTE? Or are you
I'm an FTE, and I'm going to another gig that's an FTE.
Oh, okay. So you love you some FTE nonsense. Okay.
Look, if I could travel, like the sky's the limit. Just let me rake my pile of cash. But
yeah,
so I can't travel. So I'm gonna, do the FTE.
Man, he got 5 kids to feed, for the Total Recall reference, for those of you that didn't get it.
I only have 3 kids to feed, and I'm a consultant. So I would say, if you're not, if you have more kids to feed, a consultant route is probably the better place to go, because those usually pay. But that's, there may be some companies that reward their own internal people. I love watching Jay down a can and then grab another one as we're going. Jay, I heart you 3,000.
I'm warming up.
Are you? I think you're pretty lukewarm already. So the question is, let's put a 2021 spin on it, right? Like, none of us have been on a plane in forever, regardless of whether we're FTEs or consultants. And does anybody here, though some of you all that are FTEs don't have multiple offices, right? I know Todd's got a single office, no chance of travel for good or for better, right? I don't know about Stephen or Jon or James, but I will say that even those of us that are consultants like me, everything that I hear is, well, we may get on a plane sometime, but it's not going to be what it was. So, regardless of that, if you can't travel, if I'm doing all of my coaching through Zoom, if I'm teaching every single class through Zoom, every workshop is on Mural or Miro or whatever you want to do, right? Maybe the idea is, well, 2/3 of every coach is a consultant. Does that continue? I don't know. Does someone want to, what is the value of a consultant if they can't be in your office bothering the hell out of you, right?
Well, let me ask the same question, though. How many people who are FTEs are doing it from their house?
Everybody's doing everything from their house.
Right. So how much of a difference?
So I get where Stephen's going. Here's my thought, right? And when I was glad when Jon brought this up, because I've actually weighed this dichotomy in my head. I can't figure out which way I fall, right? Because we've talked about the idea of a pickled full-time coach, right? Like I hire Todd, and Todd comes on and he's been with the company 4 years, right? Eventually there comes a time where Todd is, again, he's of the world. He's not just in it. And you change, right? You start thinking more along the lines of long-term longevity, career options, 401ks and the whole nine, right? So that can be the potential con of having a large plethora of full-time coaches. However, the pro to having full-time coaches is they're going to have to live with all the shit that they coach. They're going to have to live with it, right? The pro/con for a consultant is, Murman, when I hire you as a consultant, I'm banking on the fact that you have done this at a bazillion other companies, and you can come in and tell me you're going to want to avoid that and avoid that and avoid this. And well, maybe you're going to want to do that, which is great. However, there's also the other side of that where I'm kind of thinking that you're coming in and telling me what to do and you don't have any skin in this game. So I constantly go back and forth in this. And if the question is, do we need or do we want full-time coaching? I think the answer is, I honestly think the answer is yes. But I think that coaching engagement model, what have you, needs to be built in a way that you are consistently pushing your full-time coaches to always better themselves, because that's the only way they're going to truly be efficient is if they're consistently pushing. And that's just, I think that's where I've landed.
Let me add a little bit to it, and then I'll see what James and others have to say on this. If you look at it from other roles, not just coaching, I mean, software development, project managers, product managers, it's sort of the same if you look at it. I mean, you want people that have a breadth of experience, lots of industry knowledge, have done different things, been to other companies, can change your culture. And that's why we like hiring new FTEs, because they're fresh ideas and they can help us change things. So in a way, it's not really just the Agile coaches. I mean, if you have a coach that's been there 5 years and you're getting pickled, I mean, some product managers and other things, it's the same thing. If you have a software dev that's been there 5 years, how much do you think they've really refactored and updated and done bleeding edge stuff on their products? They usually get pretty stuck in their ways the first few years and then just refine on it. And then you need fresh blood and new devs to kind of change the way of how you've been doing things. So I think it is a healthy balance, but I think it is a little difficult because you really have to challenge those FTEs to don't get pickled, basically. I mean, that's the best way to say it, but sometimes being pickled means your time's really up here. Like, you need to make a change to be relevant. I mean, that's a real conversation sometimes.
So curiosity question real quick. I didn't dive into the stats to see what they are. So my underlying question is, are we truly talking about an FTE internal coach that is coaching teams per se, or coaching the organization? Or are we talking about FTEs who actually are like managers or a CTO who's driving the direction?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So Kellogg's touching on something that is one of my favorite pet peeves from clients that I've had the last several years, which is when you're an FTE coach, right? So how did you get there, right? Are you my favorite idiom was whenever I would get introduced to, oh, hey, welcome consultants person. Here's our transformation team, right? Do we know?
Hey, I resemble this remark, so be careful and keep going.
So Jay, you're a weirdo in that you took that assignment actually seriously and said, how do I learn how to grow into this role? Whereas usually transformation teams are built by and large, not everybody, but by and large, they're built with people that their departments weren't huge fans of them. And when persons were like, I'd like to create a transformation team, you know who they're giving up for their transformation team? They're lower performers. I don't mean to speak ill of transformation teams. It's just, that's what their managers tell me. I'm not.
What
I don't
big
know
shitty companies have you been working at, Murm?
But I mean, Murman's not wrong, and couple that.
I'm not.
Couple that with the fact that you're also treating your transformation like it's a project, in the sense that there is a finite start and end. Now you've two things right in front of you. You've created two roadblocks right in front of you.
You give
You
him
are
a
recording though, right?
You give him a I am.
Because he just said that you're not wrong. Just want to make sure that was recorded.
Oh, listen, he's listen, the soft nuzzle of his language is usually one-on-one. So I'm not intimidated at all.
All right, that's creepy. Moving on.
Hold on. Let me ask this, because I agree that FTEs are important in this, but you're striking something, Kellogg, on something that's interesting, because a lot of the FTE people and transformation coaches, whatever you want to call it, like a lot of them are more program managers trying to get an outcome, right? Because they're trying to get their bonus, they're trying to hit a KPI, and they're just trying to deliver something, especially in the public companies, where if you don't deliver something, our quarterly, projections don't hit. That's a real scenario. But on the flip side, once again, playing devil's advocate on the other side, that consultant is doing an agreement for a sale to sell a service to improve the company. And, culturally, it's hard to say this service has changed your culture. So sometimes you need KPIs like teams launched or other metrics to kind of solidify the sale or agreement of the consulting services having an impact.
John, I've seen people being bonused on the number of arts they've launched in a given quarter or 12-month basis. Doesn't matter how they were. Doesn't matter.
My
You
bonus
get
has
paid
nothing
for the number of trains you've run on.
My
run on you.
Jesus, my bonus has nothing to do with the amount of story points I complete in a given year. But to that point, John, I'm going to say something that's probably incendiary, and I'm going to piss a bunch of people off. But I did it to a whole room of coaches
nothing
twice.
Incendiary has been said so far.
So your first on the back of your first statement, if you have only done Agile at one place, and I mean to say that you have only been involved in a transformation, a Scrum Master, a product owner in one organization, you're not an Agile coach, you're an Agile practitioner. You're an Agile practitioner. And I say this with the most heart, and this is my opinion, right? Don't besmirch anybody else. I honestly believe that I have met some brilliant coaches that have only worked in one place. And while I still think they're brilliant coaches, I think they could benefit by getting experience in other places to have something to, it's the comparison, right?
Right.
That I truly, as much as I almost feel uncomfortable saying that, because I know a lot of great coaches who probably listen to the show who've only worked at one place. But at the same time, I think you suffer from a lack of comparison. If I really want to piss everybody off, I'm going to say, if you call yourself a coach and you only know safe, you're not a coach, you're a safe coach.
I'm gonna ignore
You're a safe you're a safe coach.
So I do think
the last bit of nonsense.
Go on, Stephen.
I'll throw out two things more. One is, I do think there's a difference between being a coach and being a good mentor. And so I think a lot of people that grow up in a company that learn Agile and build it and help that area, I consider myself more of an Agile mentor. I have no certs. I don't do any
I would say a lot of people
coaching. I'm a mentor.
To your point, Stephen, I think that most people would consider coaching mentorship. And I say that because
I'm going the opposite way, though. I consider myself a mentor, not a coach.
I know that, but what I'm saying is that people have misconstrued the idea, me included. At one point in time, there was a part in my coaching journey where someone pulled me aside and they said, let's look through all the coaching stances. Where do you identify? And I was like, oh, I'm not a coach. Maybe I just know things and I tell people things, which is where that's when I started the phrase.
Teach.
Well, that's when I started the phrase coaching's not telling, right? So let me slightly redirect. So Todd,
This
I know
thing's going
this
off the rails fast.
No, it's not.
Yes,
this isn't
it
even
is.
close to off the rails.
We're way off topic here, people.
This isn't what no. When I thought about off the rails,
we don't need to get into the 19 stances of coaching. The point was
No.
we're talking about FTEs.
Not now, James. He called on me.
Yeah. Shut up, Beardy. So Todd.
Wait, that's like four of us you just called Beardy.
No, the ugly one.
Or five. Okay.
So Todd has grown an incredible length in his current gig, right? So he works in the government space, and I've had a lot of conversation with Todd in terms of where he was, where he's currently at, where he wants to go, kind of a thing. So I want to touch on something Jay said earlier, Todd, in that someone that has grown up where they're at, right? This idea of practitioner versus coach. And you're not so egotistical that you're going to care about the terminology of that, but just how do you receive that idea of like, I come up in my agility knowledge, understanding, practice, whatever, right? Where I'm at. How do you process that versus the consultant a-holes like me that jump from client to client?
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with Jay. I mean, I certainly understand, because I mean, when I joined the organization I'm with, I was a business analyst, / kind of proxy product owner. And as I eventually shifted, even when I was in that role, I would have conversations with developers and database people, and they'd be like, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, I did something before I was a business analyst. So I mean, I had other experiences, and it really caught them off guard. But to the point of the purely agile side, I mean, there's stuff that I've been saying for the last 3.5 years that now I hear people that have only been here a year say the same thing, and it was like, this sounds familiar. But they're like one notch above me, and so they're talking to people that I haven't gotten a chance to talk to. And but I had a conversation the other day, like, they said something that, like I said, I've said for like the last 3.5 years, and they're like, why aren't you more like animated and agitated about this? I was like, I've said it a lot. Go say that to somebody that can make a change. So, but I mean, from Jay's point, to the, yeah, I mean, I would like to think that through my interactions with Agile Uprising, in particular, and being able to bounce ideas off, that to a degree I have some opportunity to be a little bit of a coach. Even if I'm really just an Agile practitioner.
And I don't mean to make that remark as a slight, right? Because everybody's got to start somewhere, right? Everybody has to start somewhere. And I do think there are some brilliant practitioners, and actually some people who, maybe they are coaches working at just one company. But my question to that as a counter is, then, say John and I come up together at, give me a company that's not in business anymore.
MySpace.
MySpace. There you go. That's a good example. So John and I come up in MySpace together, right? And we become Scrum Masters, and we eventually call ourselves coaches. John and I are at that point expert MySpace Agile coaches, right? We're not, and I'm not saying that's bad. Yep. That's not a bad thing, but there is something to be said by the compare and contrast aspect. Right, that like Stephen and Murman and Gifford have gotten, where you've been all around the place. You've literally got punched in the face by multiple different people. When those bruises heal, you have a hell of a comparison to tell.
No, Jay. But don't get me wrong. I mean, I understand. I mean, if I spend the next however many years taking where we are to some like well-oiled machine, I will get to a point where it may be the unprecedented success, but it's still unprecedented success just within that organization. I go somewhere else, it's back to little fish in a big pond, and I can draw on some of those experiences, but it's still going to take a step back to find the new starting point.
I mean, we all run out of talent eventually. It's just a question of where and when do we do it.
Well, but so my first, air quotes, coaching opportunity was a lot of what you described, Jay, right? It was I used to call myself the Scrum referee, right? It was a couple of Scrum Masters were having an argument over the right way to like organize their Jira board, or to have a stand up, or like, no, you should do retros this way, right? Yeah.
Clearly we need to turn this into a debate about spikes.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, we don't really know how to break this tie, so let's call Murman in. And I'd get these random texts like, hey, can you come to this meeting room? And I'm like, oh, I'm about to break another Scrum tie, right? Which is how you start like cutting your teeth of how do I actually help other people walk through this? And I think like, hey, I'm coaching, I'm doing this thing. And all I was really doing was just like refereeing stuff. And that's part of the coaching stance.
That is part of coaching. Right?
It is. Right?
I know.
But
Hold on.
Gifford-
Let me bring up a point though, because, and I don't know how to phrase this, and I'm actually curious about Murman and Stephen and your experiences, because I have done some short contract stints. I don't know if I want to call it pure consulting, but in those areas where I was brought in for a 6 or 12-month engagement, as much as I wanted to coach and really lead with people first, I had an obligation in a very short time span where, I hate to admit this, but like sometimes facts don't care about your feelings was a phrase that had to kind of almost come out sometimes. Because like, I don't have enough time to coach you on this journey when I have a C-suite paying for my contract to have an outcome. And that's a really sticky situation times as a coach, is like, I'll give you a month, I'll give you 3 months to learn. But at some point, when is it really a people problem where the business has to make a business decision that the coaching is not really effective in the timeline you're given?
Yep.
But I mean, that's where I've led in with hey, you're going to run into Noah's Ark here, people. There's people that aren't going to make this transformation and are going to sink you. So if you haven't allotted a severance budget, you better go find it, because most likely 9 times out of 10, we're going to load the good people onto the boat, and the rest of them you're going to have to get rid of.
And that's where FTE,
Borland, baby.
It's dangerous with FTE coaches, because an FTE coach is just going to be like, oh, 1 quarter down, another quarter down, 1 year down, 2 years down. They're just going to keep trying.
I've been here 3.5 years though, banging my head against the wall.
Yeah, you're part of the problem. Bring in a consultant.
I don't have a statement of work. There's no statement of work that, hey, look, man, I could knock off the first freaking, I got a year-long contract. I can knock off the first 10 things on my statement of work. The rest of these 2, yeah, they're gravy. I can go hang out at the bar and drink freaking cherry vodkas till I vomit every day.
Can I just say that consultant coaches do not speak like that nor act like that in a normal professional
It depends
setting.
what firm you're from, Merman. Get it right.
So,
by the way, you are
drunk with a lot of thought workers.
You are part of the problem. Bring in a consultant is going to be the quote of the episode. I'm turning that into word art.
I have stated every single client I've ever been to, I don't care if I can work with anybody. I can make any situation work if I have the right endorsement, the right engagement, and the right support from people. I think the idea of, as a consultant, now maybe I think if I'm an FTE, I go in with what's our severance budget, right? Like, because I'm with you in that not everybody's going to make it, but as someone that's an outsider coming in, I think that consultancies that make their money off giving recommendations off who to fire.
No, you don't go in with, as an FTE, worried about the severance budget. As an FTE, you worry about going in and saying, what can I do to make sure that I still get mine? I still get my bonus. I'm still meeting the minimum, I'm meeting the tier +1 to get myself still paid without getting myself fired. And this is why that whole pickling term comes back, right?
And because Jay, you just mentioned something interesting too, and I want to hear the rest of what you're about to say, but most coaches that are full-time are also nowhere near the very high-level leadership that needs influenced, and that's a managing up issue. But the consultants, though, are very close to those people, which is why they can usually make an impact quicker, because they're already influencing the top-down you need. So a lot of full-time people, you almost have to give them slack, because like they're usually 2 or 3 or 4 levels way away from that influencer you need.
Yes, that's totally true. There's a company, they offer safe training. I think the name is Tenemos, I think.
Big in India.
They had a blog posting, whatever, where they talked about how in order for change to work, you need 3 parts. You need an internal champion, right? Which could be your FTE coach. You need an external champion. And you need an executive champion. So you need an internal champion, which is someone who's bought in. Look, I'm willing to live with whatever decisions we make. Let's go. You need an external champion.
That's so easy to get those 3 things. I mean,
bullshit.
I'm going to call bullshit. I feel like it's the exorcist.
I know.
We can do an organizational exorcist, and then your company's going to be agile. Oh,
So this
shit.
was-
All I need is an arm to start growing out of my forehead, and
I
this
need a young,
transformation's
I
off
need,
to
a,
a great
I need a
start.
young Agilist. I need an old Agilist.
Well, so I want to ask something kind of based on what Jay was saying, and it's really, I think this is super self-serving for me because I'm curious. But so on top of what Jay's talking about for the levels of sponsorship, but when you're talking about FTE coach versus consultant coach, you know, how does that shake out from say, for instance, like, you know, talking about, you know, Murman talking about, you know, my, you know, kind of how things have progressed for me in the last 11 months, which is really where we are right now. But you know, I'm kind of approaching this position where I may be able to start to work within my organization as a team coach, and it may be on kind of the product owner side. But you know, what is your experience for that versus bringing somebody, you know, from outside as an FTE coach versus kind of growing them internally? And hang on, Jay, hang on a second.
Yep.
And because the reason I ask is because, you know, I can see that there would be, I can see there's two schools of thought here. Is that one is that you have an organization that's only willing to listen to somebody internal because they actually understand where we are and, you know, where we've been. But the flip side of that is wanting somebody with outside cred, that has done this at a variety of places that can bring additional insight. I mean, ultimately, what tracks better for you know culture and organization, you know, for how you get, you know, say an FTE. Is that
Hold
too
on,
complex of a question?
No,
Jay,
I think
let me pull in Stephen for this. So Stephen, you were not always a consultant. Not all of us who are consultants have been, right? So at some point in time, you had to spread your big boy wings and start doing your big boy things, because maybe your company, maybe your company can't afford consultants, right? Like maybe, especially if you're in the public sector or you're the government sector, or maybe you're the nonprofit sector, right? Maybe you can't pay, you know, name the consultancy. I can't pay them to come in and fix my shit, right? So I feel like that's what Todd's saying is, you know, I don't know if that's what you were meaning to say, Todd, but from the times that I've talked to you before, like I guess let me throw it to Stephen. Like, what do you do in that position of you're looking around going, I know I got to do something, right? And there's not a consultant coming to my rescue, kind of a thing. Like,
So
what do I do next?
for me in my last gig, when I was hired on, there was a consultant, some guy by the name of Bob, that some of you know, and he and his crew were there doing hey, we're spinning this company up on Agile and we're here to teach and we're coaching them, and it was about a 2-week process. And then I was hired on during that time. So there is the, you know, are we doing consulting? And is it the equivalent of a full-time, you're engaged at this company full-time versus an FTE? For me, basically, I stepped in at that point with a bunch of people where the executives were telling Bob, yeah, we understand, sure. And then when he left, they really didn't understand. So from my perspective, I really had to step up. But again, it was a smaller company. I didn't have the layers, right? So for me, I had to step up and basically get in the CEO's face and say, okay, I'm cutting you off. You can't walk in and tell the developer you need this in production in 10 minutes because you just found a bug. You can't do that anymore. Oh, I know. I shouldn't do that. No, I'm saying you can't. And I had to have that conversation. Yeah. And then I had to back it up by telling the developers, if he comes to you, you have to tell him that he has to come through me to get approval. And that was hard. But after you did,
yep.
So it was the internal, I mean, I had the ability to do that. But again, part of that was the size of the company.
Well, and so maybe what you're hitting on there is kind of option number 3, which maybe the route that we go. It's what I've been trying to get, is have somebody at least come in, you know, as an external person and do like real training, because that's really what we need. I don't care what any of y'all think about training and certs. That's what we need where I am right now is baseline. It's not safe, Murman, sit down. But just like baseline, hear it from somebody else. This is the way that you at least need to start. You can evolve when you get better at this. And then after that, some of us that are FTEs that go, no, remember what trainer X said? This is what we need to kind of,
But this was a piece I was actually going to bring up. So I have a very split background. That's the networking hardware and all of that crap, and the development and Agile and all of that crap. With my split background, I am currently in a position where I am the equivalent of a fractional CIO. So my question is that something that I just haven't seen in Agile, or is that potentially something that's needed, where I basically have 25 clients where I'm the CIO? They don't all get 40 hours of my time, obviously, but there's a difference between going in, dumping a 2 week of training on a bunch of people, walking away and hoping they get it right, versus having somebody that consistently you get a weekly check-in. And Google didn't understand, so I guess it was a bad suggestion.
Did Kellogg just throw a humble brag our way?
No.
No. I get where the man's coming from.
No, he's right. Go on, Gifford.
I mean, a lot of this. I mean, there's no way in hell that I trust a 2 weeks of training and just hope to God that people get it. I'm never going to mail somebody a scrum from the trenches over the weekend and say we're going Agile on Monday. Jay and I, we've been there.
You know how much money I spent on therapy to forget that, and here you are bringing it up 3 beers in.
But
come on.
Look,
you therapy for
so you need somebody there. You need somebody that is in that coaching role that has the experience, whether they're an FTE or a consultant. You got to look at what your budget is. I know that I can pay for 3 coaches for a year for somewhere around $500K. I can bring Billy Big Box, captain of this, Big Six, for like 10 minutes. So I'm going to probably bring in a coach. Hopefully we can keep finding that budget. They're adding the value I need. And there's somebody here that I can grow and invest in. The problem though is that in that interview process, you need to find people that don't give a shit about what the actual company is. And I mean, you got to care about the company, but you hire people that are invested in the mindset that I don't care if I am like gritty sandpaper in your underwear at the Jersey Shore because you got a little sand in your crack, but you're going to stay at the beach all day and get chafed like hell. They're here to keep the organization in focus. And if you can find those people and hire those people, you're better off in the long run to find those gritty people that are going to stay out of the pickle brine, which shit, I've hired enough coaches that just, I'm handing out dill pickles left and right. But there are a breed of people that can balance that goal of, I'm here to improve this company, and it doesn't matter how many times I get hit in the face and have to push this rock up this hill. This is what I was hired to do, and damn it, I'm doing it.
Why is it left and right and not right and left?
I don't know. It's West
Virginia. It is.
I don't know.
Because L comes first in the alphabet. To answer Todd's question, I do think there is a definite benefit to growing your own coaching internally, to training those people, to staffing them up, to giving them the room to grow and understand that they're learning. I do think they should be partnered with someone from Billy Big Box, right, who can help them. But eventually you want them to take ownership and go, right? Because again, the consultants aren't there forever.
And so I struggle with that, Jay, because I agree with what you're saying, but I've seen it fail a lot. So like in theory,
so why? But why does it fail?
And it goes back to one of the comments I made earlier, because here's a question, right? Do external consultants really understand the culture of the company that they're trying to effectively coach?
I'd like to take that.
Wait. But before we answer that, I will go to Jay's comment, which is we'll look at the full-time employees. You're going to probably assume they know the culture more, because I personally believe the strongest culture in a company is the middle management, because they influence both up and down and touch a lot. So the full-time employees, though, unfortunately, like I said earlier, are not in a great spot to influence change typically. And that's usually the conundrum and issue with growing it internally, is you basically grow a transformation team of C players, as Murm called it, says they get pulled in. And that's the problem. There are a bunch of C and B players that are not your A players that are in a position that aren't in an influential spot in the company. But I want to go back to that question now of, does an external consultant really understand the culture of a company?
Wrong.
That's a baller move by Jon to say, let me ask a question. Hold on. I'm going to talk.
Jon finally turned the show around. Jesus.
I'm going to talk for a 20 Mississippi on something not related. And by the way, now that I'm done talking, here's my cue.
Only when you're hosting. Only when you're hosting.
I should host more. The learning curve is just different when you are an FTE than a consultant. And here's why. I strongly believe why. When you're an FTE, you're either on an island, with one or two or maybe three other people. But for the most part, when you're
25.
an FTE, well, whatever, but then that company has a size that you're still going to be on an island. Like most companies are not going to have FTEs that I would say are true, what we would call with the full coaching stance, right? And so you have to, when I was an FTE trying to figure out what a fucking coach was, right? It was on me to go to local meetups. It was on me to find other people in my local community because I wasn't traveling. I certainly wasn't going to conferences at that time. And I think some of us have been in that boat before. I had to actively go search for my mentorship. Whereas when you're in a consultancy, right? When I was part of, Solutions IQ's, coaching cohort, I had hundreds of people that were my peers. They just had different experiences, and I could go, hey, has anybody encountered X, right?
Were those the business analysts you guys slipped in because you couldn't hire enough coaches to fill a gig?
I'm talking about before we got acquired.
Ooh.
I'm talking about before. So all I'm trying to say is
that's interesting, Merv. You are saying though that you have a group of people culturally in that own little bubble of your consultant company that's independent of the companies you're helping that has a different culture.
They're encountering other clients, they're seeing other scenarios, they're seeing other communities of practice, they're seeing other roadblocks, leadership impediments, and I don't have to go, I have to quit my job and go to a new job to get some new experience. I can go, hey, can we jump on Slack and talk for like 30 minutes and you give me a download on what's up kind of a thing. Right now, like working at another consultancy, if I go, hey, has there been a client that's ever said no thanks when we pitched them X, Y, and Z? What did they say and why? I get 10 answers in 5 minutes kind of a thing, right? It might not.
But that's a different shift though from, am I a full-time employee who has been here for a couple of years who actually has a good bead on the company culture? Because to me, a lot of the times that I see the consultant type things fail, it's because here's the framework you have to implement, but it doesn't take into account the human factor or the culture factor. And so you can, with a full-time employee, understand that a little better, I think.
Maybe. So maybe, right? I don't think that. So there have been certainly many coaching gigs where I got pulled in and I get told, do the safe or do the scrum or do the whatever kind of a thing. So, I mean, if that's, those are scenarios that I rather would love to forget because those aren't great expectations or learning objectives, outcomes, whatever, right? So maybe an opportunity for, even if you are an FTE or a consultant, we all have an equal opportunity to say, listen, regardless of whether I'm doing this for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 10 years, whatever, let's talk about objectives. And I have talked with Todd before about the struggle with getting your boss as an FTE to go, no, these are optimal objectives. This is a lean experiment. This is this, and I, and if Todd's boss is listening, you're not a terrible person, right? But I'm saying that everybody has that opportunity to do that. the difference is when you meet that first ceiling, that second ceiling, that third ceiling of resistance, what are you going to pull from, right? Are you going to go read a blog post, a YouTube clip? Like, you're going to go to a meetup? I mean, that might help. Or do you have a stable of other people that are just waiting to help you get out of your hole?
I will back Murm up real quick on one thing, which is usually going back to the full-time full-time employee not being in a position to effectively actually influence the change. Even though they're a great coach, a lot of the times they're tunnel visioned on what they think the perceived value is of what they need to fix because of where they're placed in the organization. So they're like, we got to fix the delivery. These people aren't story pointing right. They're not communicating effectively. And then all of a sudden they're like, we need an external help. So I'm just going to pick on Murm comes in, he gets hired in. He goes in, he goes, I need to talk to the leader of this space first to understand what's happening. And he gets a completely different cultural outcome from him of what he wants done.
I get a different answer.
Yeah, complete, because there's different, he's worried about budget. He's worried about the business value return of their sales. Like, it's completely night and day. And like, that's a huge disconnect in my opinion. That's where it is valuable to have the consultant come in, because they actually do know how to actually culturally talk to those leaders and people, while the internal people have really no experience or clue, to be honest.
I want to ask.
So you actually described why I'm in my position I'm in, which is I talk to the business leaders.
Quasi-CIO. No, we heard you.
I talk to the business leaders, right? So I will get suggestions from my team. Oh, they need to do this. Well, tell me the business reason why they need to do that. Because it'll make it easier for us. That's not a business reason for them.
Denied.
That's a business reason for
Denied.
you, your job, right? So the same thing can happen. That's part of why I would throw out that is a fractional coach in this space a viable position.
Yes. I'm curious to hear what Gifford has to say, because I know Gifford has
That's
worked
a first.
No, I know that in his, I think it's his current life, maybe his previous life, I don't know. Gifford works a lot with the C-suite, right? And it is a totally different monster. And James, you are a full-time employee who has a background as a consultant Agile coach. So I'm curious to hear what your read is on the whole thing, right? Like, are we getting high on our own supply here? Are we doing too much navel gazing, or are we kind of spot on with you need to have a balance, or is it the typical Agile coach answer of it depends?
No, I mean, there is a balance. I mean, I was hired as the global director of Agile transformation. I'm now the global director of the global director of process and tools. So you can see how, there's a weirdness there where individuals and interactions over the old process and tools. But, when we look at the organization, they have a goal of agility, and we're working with the C-suite, and all of them have different problems to solve. You got the VPs of delivery that got to ship. You got the VPs of QA that got to try to make the software less shitty, even though they're probably not actually doing anything. And then you got I got a VP of enterprise architecture who's, concerned about the architecture, the tech debt, and everything, where it's all going. But at the end of the day, the company is looking to deliver. And so how do we deliver more effectively, efficiently, with the bodies that we have? How do we improve our process? And so working with the C-suite, we looked at the product lines. We looked at the entire ecosystem of that company and said, here are the systems that we need to change. You have 75% of your portfolio where the product is in its life cycle where they need to be disruptive. And so we're going to invest heavily in Agile, Scrum, our hybrid, fuck safe, we're doing it our own way kind of framework. And we're going to blend the meta framework. So we're going to blend everything that we can that solves the context of the problems for this company. Fuck sake. And then we're going to then, focus on everybody else and use evolutionary change to evolve them to a point where we deem they're agile enough, because they're in the late stages of product development. So they're there as a cash cow. They bring in the bucks. Management, the CIO sitting there with the cash rake, raking in the cash, going, "Hey, we're making money, keeping customers happy, but don't screw up delivering it." So
you just made me think, Gifford, and somebody should take notes to host this next episode. I'm going to nominate Stephen Kellogg. Is there such thing as Agile enough?
There is agile enough. You literally need to figure out what is the value proposition. I've got a team that, they may never ever move away from iterative waterfall, but that's agile enough.
Do they need to?
They're focusing on limiting WIP.
I don't know about
They have
that.
a yearly release cycle where doctors can't take the software more than once a year. So they might have they have a beta, they have some different things like that. But there are people that see it every once in a while, every, quarter or so. So we're agile enough. We can plan a quarter at a time. We have enough requirements for a quarter. During that quarter, while people are executing, we got the next quarter. But it's literally just a waterfall broken up into bite-sized chunks with a bunch of good agile practices laid in there. And that's agile enough for them because they're mint and they're making money and they're delivering shit and the quality's better than it was 2 years ago.
As long as we're making mint, that's, because if I remember one of the pillars of manifesto, it's making mint over delivering real shit.
But Gifford makes a very valid point, right? So
that's never been said.
I know, right? But the whole idea of just enough, not just because, or we need to go agile because a company wants to go agile because it's a marketing fad when they say we need to do this and we're going to increase productivity, blah, 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 and all these other bullshit sales pitches that we hear, right? I do think there is conceptually the idea of agile just enough, not just because, and I do think, no offense to the consulting companies, but I do think they kind of sell something. They're a little bit disingenuous in what they're selling when they call up Jay and John Inc. And they say, oh yeah, we're like Earl Scheib, I'll get paint your house for $29.95. We can make you agile for $14.99.99. And all it takes is 6 consultants, a license to rally, and and I do.
I've written sals that said almost exactly that.
And now, well, you are from Texas, and so is Earl Scheib. But I do think, there is a place to, and I think this is where good coaches differentiate themselves from the also rans, is the ability to step into a situation and say, look, maybe agile isn't for you, but let's get you more adaptable to responding to change in a positive manner. And that right there will pay dividends in ways that you can't even think of. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit it. I've gone back and read a lot of project management stuff lately. I mean, I just got off a call with Johanna Rothman where she introduced me to a couple guys to do critical chain project management, because I think there is a place for that in some of the Gifford, especially your current. I think there is a place for that, and the PMI doesn't teach it. They teach, put the buffer on the end. But
hold on, no, John, no. This is I'm cutting this off. This is we're gonna go from this was great. No. Yeah, I love you too.
No, fuck you. There is totally a place in the world for actual traditional project management, even within Agile. And the people that do not see this, they can go fuck themselves.
Are you holding a blunt in your hand right now?
No, I'm not holding a blunt in my hand. I gotta pass it. I gotta get random drug tests.
My quick comment is if somebody says this is good enough Agile, then I'm assuming they're also saying our profits and revenue and our company's success is good enough. Like, let's just coast.
How much money are you making?
I don't know if I agree with that.
Here's where I'm at. We're getting close to time, and I
feel
we're not.
Like we can keep going. We'll just cut it in 2 pieces. Keep going. I've got 2 more beers behind me. I'm not stopping. Keep going.
I still want to get back to this making mint. I mean, it's like, do I get paid?
Yeah, making mint over really giving a shit.
Look, if you want to find out what mint is, you go watch Bias Plies and what the hell is that YouTube?
I'm just a mint practitioner. I'm working towards it. So.
It's fucking mint.
Hey, so there's another interesting little twist I'll throw out if we want to try to get back on track. But that I think there's also a tendency for the smaller business to do homegrown, right? Because they can't afford to bring in a big coach. So part of what we end up comparing are the smaller to middler sized dev shops that end up with, oh yeah, I'm the coach here, but I also do development 80% of the time. Okay, you're not really a coach there. You're a team lead, or you're an agile, proponent for the company. That's different than actually coaching, right? So I think there's that piece. And then I think there's the other piece of the whole C-suite level that has one idea because they've heard a cute little blurb that says, oh, if I go agile, my profits are going to, go up by 30% and I'm going to turn things around 4 times faster. And so that's what they're quote unquote buying. But, then the coach gets in there and tries to work with just the dev team and it doesn't line up. So
I think you're right where the coaching exposure needs to be to multiple, and I think John was poking at this before, right? With the level of cultural influence you actually wield, where I actually said, and I will admit to this, I said this to Cusack when he was coaching my org in a previous life when Gifford was there and Left was there and a whole bunch of these, it's nice working with proper villains again. I said at one point, you're going to say the same thing I'm going to say, but you're paid 3 times as much as me per hour. So they're going to listen to you more because they think more expensive. It's like my father-in-law. My father-in-law wanted to go out and buy a new computer because his computer broke. And he said, Jay, what do you think about an iMac? And I said, what do you think about it? What do you mean? What do I think about an iMac? He said, well, should I get an iMac? I said, do you want to be able to not right click anymore? And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, Macintoshes only have 1 mouse button. And he looked at me and I said, well, why did you want a Mac? He goes, well, they're expensive. I figured they're good. I'm like, yeah, they're good, but you can't right click. So it's not purpose fit for you. And he went,
of all the reasons
I think I'll just get a Dell.
Not get an iMac, you Neanderthal, like you hit a button.
Murman, look, you're forgetting the fact that I am tech support for everybody because I do computers. So when anything breaks, I get called and I don't have a Macintosh.
I think the right click is legit. I'm not gonna,
my magic mouse right clicks. Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, we know
magic
that.
Mouse right clicks. Let's draw this back in. We're off
go on, Gifford.
Fuck you, Mac. And,
we've been off topic for about a half hour. So
look, if I had to give any advice to anybody, it's make your freaking middle management criteria that you've been a scrum master for a certain amount of time. You bring in the external coaches to grow the management team. You hire internal coaches to work with that management team, and you create a role to get to any level of management within the IT organization. You make them a scrum master, and you use those resources, whether it's an internal coach or
you just use the term resources. You
look,
meat widget.
Meat widgets.
All right, I'm throwing a flag on the play with
posters. That you invest in those people and teach them servant leadership from the get-go, and stop promoting the fuckers that are firefighters and the heroes.
But
and
here's
your company's going to be less shitty.
Hold on, Jay. You're
bottoms up, bitches.
I missed you too. Your prerequisites are almost dead on arrival from my experience, only in that middle management got to middle management before the term Scrum Master became a unified job role in their org. And so by and large, to say, well, you can be in this role. So regardless of the framework, right, there's, the framework usually references leadership in one way or another. And even if you don't use a framework, you're going to reference leadership in one way or another, but they're never going to have. I would love it if everybody was required to have had at least a year or two of Scrum Master experience before they do anything from a leadership perspective, because they've at least felt the pain of the people that are doing the work that they're asking them to do work, right? Like bar none, you've done the work. Like I know the pain that Scrum Masters have felt because I've been a Scrum Master. I know the pain that product owners have felt because I've been a product owner. But you're not going to see that in org. You especially aren't going to get that if you're an FTE. And if you're a consultant coming in going, all right, who are the people that used to be Scrum Masters or have Scrum Master experience? They're going to go, oh, well, there's all these junior people that don't have senior level experience, and we can't get rid of all the middle management anyways. And so here's what you have, do with them what you can. And that's, it just seems like I don't think that your idea is like bad on its face. It just seems like a fool's errand to go down that path.
Well,
Is that fair?
But
I don't know. I would.
It would
There's
be
a
a
company investing in the future.
it's go on, Todd. What do you think?
I was
And
gonna
I'll
say,
go.
there's a couple of people I work with right now that if I could, I would make them a scrum master tomorrow and take them out of the role that they're in, so that they had to walk a mile in the shoes that I'm,
I'd love
stuck-
that, but it's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Well, no, but I'm saying, if I could wave a magic wand, I absolutely that's probably the best thing that I could do at this point, is to let them see what that actually looks like when delivery is on the line.
So there
and
ain't no
take them-
magic
and take
wands or
them out.
silver bullets in what we do. It's
No.
just
No, there's no
It's
panacea.
never going to happen.
Well,
There's
I
no
know that-
panacea, but I will say this, right? So think about it. Philosophically. So the financial crisis of 2008 basically reset the timer for a whole bunch of people. So most of the people most of you were all in the same age bracket demographic. We should be moving into positions of higher middle management, senior management, but we haven't, because there have been less people that retired because their 401ks got killed in 2008, right? So we have a general slowing of that curve. So was it James that said, I think it was James that said, I wish all the middle managers had been scrum masters. I mean, think about how much easier our lives would be if we had people who are in middle management positions that were influential, that actually understand the trenches that we're coming out of. We are not there yet. We are going to get there eventually. The hope is that we are going to get there before the next big management fad comes out, because let's be honest here, Agile has become a management fad. Before that next big fad comes out, so we have influenced enough people here. Shameless plug to the AU boot camp. We have influenced enough people to get them thinking in the right direction that we can then watch them grow and have the org grow along with them. I think Gifford is right. It's very different to take someone who's run a PMO for their whole lives, who's kind of drank enough of the Agile Kool-Aid that they think they kind of sort of get it, or maybe they do get it, and then expect them to lead a bunch of people where the whole concept of servant leadership and empowerment is just natural. I don't know, man. I don't know. But I think Gifford is onto something. I think he's right. There is a benefit to being able to do the job of the people that work for you. However, I can argue that, I come from a family of lawyers, that I can see the benefit of I don't need to do John's job in order to manage job to make him more efficient at his job. I don't know what I just said. It was my fourth beer I just finished.
Most of it made sense, Jay. I
there we
would
go.
say that.
Hey, look, all I heard was James was right. Fuck.
Stop listening after
the number
that.
of people that have said I agree with GIF tonight is startling. I will say that.
Hold on.
He's like John's clock. John's clock is right twice a day. So is Gifford.
I did want to challenge Gifford on one thing, which is I agreed with a lot of what he said. However, hey, Gifford, if you had the same title, same pay, same everything, but the whole engagement of your position and your influence in the company was different, that instead of I don't know where you are, but let's just assume you're very close to senior leadership, C-suite, whatever it is, and that's how you were brought in. Let's say it was actually one of your peers that was very alone and rogue in the company that wanted to do this, and you were actually underneath one of them instead. Would you be as successful?
Probably not.
And that's the real FTE problem. That's the FTE problem.
That is the FT problem, and it's about changing your culture, and it's
As a
you know,
consultant,
I
I
think
can
even
just
that's a podcast,
I can just
right?
keep hunting for different people to work with and just keep going until I find the right person. So I don't report to any of them, and most of the time the people I'm talking with can't fire me anyways, because it's like a boss's boss or someone completely removed is signing the checks. And so, why should I care if someone gives me the Heisman? Like I'm just here to, is that a dog or is that a dog?
yes, it's my dog.
Oh,
It's coming over
okay.
to tell me it's going to take a dump.
Is it drinking Woodford as well?
No, it's telling me it's going to take a dump.
Okay. Yeah. So I just, that again, that it again, further emphasizing why you need probably some of both. The problem is that most organizations, it's really tough to find. I wrote many years ago, I wrote about trying to find an early adopter in your transformation work. And it doesn't, I personally think that your internal advocate or your internal change agent or whatever you want to call them, they don't have to be a coach. In fact, like I would prefer they not have a weird swanky title related to that. Like, regardless of how many times Jay like holds a beer up to the air, you just need someone that's empowered that can help you get shit done. Like whatever they are, right? Which goes back to, I forget which one of you said this, like you got to have the external, the internal, and somebody like, I hate that I didn't say that because that's probably the smartest thing that's been said on this podcast is like, as long as you have an executive.
No, the smartest thing said was you are part of the problem, bring in a consultant.
I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's true at all.
I agree. So Murm, it sounds like, and I agree based off the conversation we're having, but and I'll pivot once again to a different role. Like in certain organizations, technology is needed to be successful, where traditionally maybe they were 10% full-time and 90% contractor and staff aug to get like technology out there really quickly, have very high flexibility. And then eventually they pivot because culturally they start to realize technology is not enabling the business. It is part of the business. And then they start to bring in more FTEs on the technology side and et cetera. Do you think coaching is going to go down that path? Because right now we started the podcast with, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. Was that expected? Did that shock anybody? Or did you go, yeah, for every one full-time, there's 2 consultants? I can see that. But do you think that's going to change? Do you think it's going to blend more into FTE? Or do you think this is just a unique scenario where maybe this is right?
I don't buy the
we have
stats,
to consider it depends on what we consider the future of our work as a air quotes coach kind of a thing, right? Is if it's going to continue, I mean, I'm not going to lie, right? I stepped out of air quotes full-time coaching gig because I did not find value in teaching classes and running workshops from my bedroom over Zoom or Teams or whatever you're using, right? I didn't find that value. I felt like the last 12 months of my life were incredibly draining. I found no value in what I was doing. And so if this is not going away anytime soon, which I equated was going to happen, what even is a coach overall in 2021 and moving on, right? Who cares about what the code of ethics is? Is there even a place for us in this world moving forward? Do we transition to something else? And that's what I thought maybe this conversation could turn into, is like, well, who cares if we're FTE or if we're consultant? Like, what is coaching anymore? Is it making teams make their velocity go up? Does it make their feature count go up? Does it make their tech debt go down? Like, what does the coach do when they're talking on a virtual thing from their bedroom?
And I want to hear comments from the others on this real quick in Gifford, but I'll say real quick, some of my most success as an FTE coach so far to date, when I try to drive change initiatives, has actually been partnering with the HR leaders in the company. And I very seldom hear Agile coaches and senior coaches go into a company and say, I'm partnering with HR on this change. It very rarely happens that way. And it's interesting how we're so people-centric, yet very, very rarely partner with HR on our initiatives.
HR and finance, the 2 last departments that are always involved in there, are 2 of the most critical departments of getting them bought in to make the transformation work. I actually had a talk with our HR guy, one of my HR people, recruiters today, and he said to me, so what do you think? We were talking about winding down our transformation office. And then he said, well, what do you think are the 2 most important, what do you think of the departments that are still left to be transformed in this whole thing? And I said, well, it's finance and HR, and you're 2 of the departments we should do first. And he kind of looked at me like I was kind of crazy. I said, org structure, incentives, how you fund work. If you can fix those 3 things in the first 90 days, and I don't mean fix, it's a bad verb. If you can reaccentuate those 3 things to the way you want to be, your culture will then follow your structure, which will follow your incentivization, which will then follow your funding model. Maybe I just, 6 beers in, or however many fucking beers in, I've finally just found the Rosetta Stone, but I'm pretty sure that's got to be close to it. And we never start that way. We start with, hey, My name is Jay. I'm here with my partner, Stephen, and we're going to come in and we're going to make all your current waterfall teams Agile teams, and you're going to use this thing called story points.
Fuck that. But
We're 5
no, I
beers
mean,
in, by the way.
I totally
Thank you for
agree
keeping track.
with Jay. I mean, at the end of the day, look, you're here to, when you're an Agile coach, whether you're a consultant, you're an FTE, hopefully your transformation is aligned around influencing HR, the money, where things come from, because ideally those are the biggest pain points. Like every single move that we make with the Agile transformation at where I work today for the next 6 days, we brought HR in from the absolute beginning. We brought finance in from the absolute beginning. Like the ideas, the way that the money flows, the way that you incent people, all of these things impact what you're trying to do with these teams. So it is 100% critical. If you're not looking at Agile as a different operating model for your company, if you're not ready to start looking at those ideas, like your company needs to operate completely fucking different. And this is the most F words I've dropped in a podcast, and I do apologize. I will blame it on Knob Creek, but and just being full of piss and vinegar because I've been an internal coach too long. But ideally, if you're not looking at your company and you're not looking at Agile as in a full-on operating model change and start looking at all the downstream systems that this touches and impacts, you're running a fool's errand. If you're going to just start out with development and have no plans to get over to everybody else, you're fucked.
Well, I don't even think you should start with
You are
development.
literally just pissing money into the toilet.
Yeah,
And
Agile or not though.
For you.
That's true of any change in the company.
Yeah.
That doesn't even just apply to Agile transformations. That's lean changes. That's culture change. That's operational excellence changes. That's any change.
Amen.
Yeah, if you don't get your change to align with where the business wants to head, it's never going to go anywhere.
You're Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill. Yep.
But once again, I'm going to keep stressing, most full-time coaches and people that are doing this have nowhere near the influence, gravity, or even probably empowerment. I bet you most coaches that are full-time don't even know the budget of their own project that they're a coach of.
Well, most of the
hold on.
have
Like,
literally just doctored up their resume to get in as a coach because they're like literally a scrum master that's briefed for 10 minutes, and they put coach on their resume, and now they're in their organization. So
I'll admit, I said what I said because this goes back to the definition of a coach. Because I bet you some of those people aren't really coaches that I just said are coaches that don't know their budget, right?
Well, like by any like measurable stretch of the definition, like I'm probably fitting in that category. But I will say, John, that there's some gigs that I walk in and I'm the engagement lead, and I was part of the SAL creation and the objectives of success and the deliverables and all that kind of a thing. There are times that I probably know the budget there, but there's just as many scenarios when I come in as a consultant, I have no fucking clue what the budget is. I'm told to shut my mouth when I ask about the budget. When I even ask about, because I've always said, if you find out how people are bonused or find out how people are compensated, you'll find out where they're going to put their effort or their energy. And the minute I even start down that path, there have been some times where I've been literally told, shut the fuck up.
That's not why you're here.
That's not why you're
4
here.
times out of 10, Murm has a good idea.
So
right.
I don't know that it's fair to say that a consultant's going to know all those things either, right? And that goes back to this saying of maybe the business doesn't feel like sharing no matter who it's asking.
But I do think there can be a similar problem in an FTE focusing on how can I change dev and get Agile pushed into dev, but they don't necessarily understand what the business impact is or where the business is heading. And so they can't present. This is why I'm recommending this, because it's going to feed to what the business needs here.
Yeah, and I'll make it quick. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, if you talk to Leff and Cusack, I mean, going back to the old school mafia of the uprising, I mean, they tell the story of the one transformation that it started out as a dev thing, and then dev began to outpace the business. They could build basically everything and anything that the business wanted, but the business wasn't ready. And then so the business became this constraint. All of this stuff comes back to systems thinking and looking at all the integrated systems and how they all touch each other. Whether it's
They were
HR, finance.
they were always the log jam. We just didn't have metrics to prove it. So which is why it's always helpful to help IT get ahead, right? So that we can go, listen, we've always known the business has no clue what they want and hasn't done near enough of the effort to validate what they're actually needing to build. But until we can prove it with metrics, which is a podcast for another day, right? How stupid that is. We can't prove it, because until business says, build what I want faster, I need it faster. Well, until we can do that, well, we can't prove that they're full of shit.
All right, so we've kind of at a high level summarized that it depends, but I think we're also agreeing that a balance is almost always needed, depending on your leadership appetite and where the business is. But it does sound like a hybrid is always needed, whether it's 30-70, 50-50, that's where the it depends comes in. But it does sound like a hybrid is always needed. It does sound like both have their pros and cons and benefits. Full-time obviously has their benefits, but placement matters, leadership matters, awareness matters. Consultants clearly have an advantage when it comes to knowledge, and clearly have an advantage when it comes to just honestly having breadth of industry experience, because they can bounce around and quickly understand. But at the flip side, you're basically bringing in people in short stints and short bursts, where that's the downside, where they have to make an impact in a shortened time frame. So there's a lot of debate there, but let's go round table real quick. So let's pick on Stephen first. What are your closing comments?
Closing comments. There's big laughter. I'm confused, but yes. So closing comments. I guess I'd say that I think it does depend, which is the fun answer. I think smaller companies are going to have a harder time bringing in that consultant, so they're going to have to figure out how to handle that. I think that could be a place for a fractional. Let's do a short training stint and then have a fractional coach. And then I think the bigger companies don't necessarily, when they bring in a consultant, have the cultural understanding or the alignment. So pairing with somebody there, especially that is going to champion it from a higher up standpoint, would be beneficial.
Todd, what are your comments?
So my takeaway is that, you can coach from Gilligan's Island so long as you have that coconut phone that lets you reach something like the Agile Uprising Discord.
Oh man, that's perfect.
That was brilliant, actually. You should have went last. You should have.
Wow. The moral of the story.
Hold on, let me make a note for the
better join our
coconut
Discord.
phone Agile Uprising sticker.
Here comes
That's
the
it. That's
sticker.
what to say.
Gifford, what are your comments?
I mean, look, for $100 an hour, you can talk to me whenever you want. I'll give you guys a discount because you've heard it from here on the podcast. I will give you an hour of my time a week to just talk about whatever the fuck you want to talk about.
What an asshole.
And literally, look, man's got to make some money.
Join the Discord. There might be a coupon involved. You might get a discount.
I mean, you can, if you join the Discord, there's the 10% discount. That's the Knob Creek talking, folks. Look, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's, do you have the right objectives? What are you trying to do to your organization? If you're looking to bring Agile to a space where it probably doesn't need to be, you go ahead and piss your money away. It just depends on what your budget is. I've been working at a company where I've been involved with the C-suite. I've had all the control in the world. I still bring in consultants when I don't have the bandwidth to do things. I'm literally getting ready to give 75 people training for product ownership because my small team doesn't have the bandwidth to do it. So I'm going to use consultants sparingly where I can get the budget to either move a problem that I don't have I have influence, but there's boulders I've been pushing up a hill for 3.5 years. If I can use that small amount of budget that I can allocate to that to help me push a boulder over a cliff to get it to change to happen, I'm going to invest there. It's where do you want to spend your money and with your people? So use your consultants wisely, grow your internal change agents, and freaking hire some internal coaches. Because if you're smart, you'll develop a whole change management organization around them and use them to galvanize and change process throughout your company. Because hopefully they read Jason Little's book, Lean Change Management, and they can do some gangster shit with that. And then, I'm just going to stop there.
And then they'll leave, get a consultant gig, charge 300 an hour, and the cycle continues.
I was this close to muting him. He had said he had reached my limit of buzz phrases that I was like, I'm about to mute him.
You made a point, Jonathan, which unfortunately Joel couldn't make it tonight, but that's one of the things that he said, where he actually worked for someone who was a homegrown Agile coach that left the org because they can make $100 and such more an hour as a consultant. That's a whole different conversation.
That's taking your 2 or 3 year junior dev that's been with you for 3 years and not paying them now what they're worth, and they leave.
Yep.
Same problem.
It happens. So I'll go next just to get my turn out of the way.
Called on.
Murm, closing
I don't
comment.
care. I don't care.
Nobody wants to hear what you have to say, Murm. Fuck you.
I didn't throw out a C note to spend time with me, so you can kiss my ass, asshole. Lick my nuts. I think that the ratio, John, to the point that we brought up 3 hours ago, I think was when we first started. I think that the ratio is probably not relative of what the industry needs now. If we were looking at it relatively speaking, you probably needed something more 50-50, kind of what we were talking about. However, the people that identify as coach could be various peoples. Maybe some of those people are leaders inside of a consultancy, and maybe they're not like boots on the ground as much as, people like, say, I've been in recent years, kind of a thing. Also, some people are full-time trainers, some people are full-time coaches that they don't do the training piece. I will say that regardless of whether you're teaching a CSM course, a leading safe course, a disciplined agile course, a whatever, right? Like if all you're doing is there to train, we oftentimes use those as what we call injections of learning, right? We inject some learning into an organization, and then we say, what do you want to do with it? And oftentimes those FTEs can, if they're properly empowered, can take those learnings and then turn them into action, right? So if you have half the people that are just trainers, and trust me, we all know people that all they do is do training. I've got lots of friends that's all they do, and that's great. I love that that's what they do. But training alone, that's just knowledge, that's not understanding. So if the other half of, if you're talking 2/3, 2/3 of them are consultants, 1/3 is trainers, 1/3 is, consultant coaches, 1 is FTE coaches. Maybe that's the right ratio. I don't know. I just think that whether you're an FTE or a consultant, you're thinking like, man, if I just get that T next to whatever framework that I'm a fan of, man, I can get bank. Like that's all. I'm done. I can work, 6, 7, 8 days a month, and I can just make all the dough or whatever, right? But is that what our industry needs? I don't know. I don't think that that's what the future of our industry is like.
All right, Jay.
Rob a check while you can, baby.
So,
Rob a check while you can.
Murman, I'm going to commit this to posterity so we come back to revisit it. But Murman actually brings up the conversation around coaching stances, which I think we should dig into that, because I fucking hate that, because I don't ever tell people I'm a coach. I just have conversations with people. I just talk to them about their work and their life and what they're trying to get done, and hope it goes from there. Take it full circle. So I when I try to think up a write-up for this episode, I feel bad for Murman because I have no idea what I would actually title it, because I think we went in a bunch of different directions, all of which were positive, all of which ended somewhere. I will say this, I guess if I had to take it all take it home, I will say this: every person who's listening is responsible for their own development and their own destiny. The one thing you can control in your career is how much you learn and how much you absorb and how much you pick up. And if everybody was concerned about, I just need to learn, I just need to keep myself learning and keep that muscle exercising and that brain moving, I think they'll end up in a better place.
Well said.
Did you just end this podcast by saying his muscle?
I don't know. I'm
He just
hoping
ended
somebody.
saying I'm 5 beers in and working
Yeah,
on
I
looking
just-
at my sixth.
I'm
so.
just kind of hoping that somebody on this call is going to stick around with me while I finish this, so we can chat a little bit and I can.
Oh, I will.
Okay.
I will.
Look,
So,
there's
we're gonna
bourbon in the glass, bro.
Absolutely.
We're-
You can't see it. There
we're
it is.
gonna
A little bit left.
we're gonna wrap it this
I mean,
up. I
there's-
love that John. I love that John's still caring about time boxes at this point in time. So for Tito Balser, also known as Jay Hershko, Stephen Kellogg, Todd Thrash, Jon Schneider, and James, I can't believe I have to admit that I know you, Gifford. James Gifford.
It's Gifford, asshole. Take it deep,
yeah.
bro. Two fingers up.
Yeah. How do I
Didn't spin,
admit
bro.
that I wish that there weren't pictures proving that I know you in public. On behalf of everybody here, this has been quite a raucous occasion. I don't know how we're going to describe this podcast, but I feel like we talked about some good things. So on behalf of the Agile Uprising, please, everybody, go visit Patreon. I feel like 5 stickers are going to come out of this podcast, and you're going to want to be a part of those. So become a Patreon member, become a Discord user. We'll try to get that in there. And apparently that's all the cool stuff's happening on Discord. So that's how I got this podcast started. Thanks everybody for joining. Brofest continued later. Peace out.